So, you like dragons, right? Element-breathing gargantuan beasts that soar through the skies and can live for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Pretty awesome, right? Well, in Dungeons & Dragons, they don't quite fulfill that fantasy. Dragons are meant to be fearsome creatures that are either a boon or a bane on the land around them, their mere presence warping the natural order of the world. But by the time a party of happy-go-lucky adventurers might encounter one, all it usually amounts to is a prolonged slog against an elemental lizard. Which is why this homebrew has come to be. We're not looking at making dragons more interesting lore-wise here, just making them much, much more deadly to fight. Or at least the ancient ones. For all the examples going forwards, we're going to be using the ancient red dragon as the template for all additions and changes. Firstly, let's look at their size. Based on 5e stats, a dragon is a gargantuan being, which is a 20-foot cube, which appears to be pretty big on a map, especially compared to player characters. And while that is true, it doesn't properly encompass the full scale and power of the dragon. Reading into past lore and books, the following stats can be found in the 3.5e Draconomicon for a gargantuan red dragon. The overall length is 85 foot, the body being 25, neck 25, tail 35, with a width of 10 foot, standing approximately 15 feet high with a wingspan up to 100 foot. If we plug this into an example diagram, it is easy to see that the 5e 20-foot cube really doesn't capture the scale the dragon really is. Even if the dragon is curled up tightly, there is no way it would be that small. An ancient dragon is closer to being a titan than simply a gargantuan lizard. Now, looking at the scale of a dragon, it is clear to see that using a dragon of this scale on an actual map of D&D would be quite impractical. I mean, who has a map or even a miniature that could fit at minimum an 85 by 40 by 15 feet or inch dragon? Well, we're not worrying about that today, we're looking at the stats. However, if I had to imagine, I'd say using interconnected miniatures or tokens would work quite well. So, excluding the size, how can the dragon be made far more deadly, even for a party of level 20 adventurers? Well, before we begin, let me just explain that these updates are based on the 2014 stat blocks, using the ancient red dragon as my template, and are designed to be switched out for use with other dragons. So whenever I say a damaged type or talk about a breath weapon, it can easily be switched out for those of other dragons. Now, let's dive in, starting off with the traits, with a much needed addition in the legendary presence trait. It is fairly simple. Dragons usually only have 3 legendary resistances and actions, but this trait grants an additional 1 for every opponent the dragon faces above 4. So a face-off against a party of 6 will give the dragon 5 resistances and actions. Immediately, the fight is more dangerous as there is less downtime for the dragon. The next trait I feel is very appropriate for an ancient dragon. This is the superiority complex trait, as let's face it, ancient dragons are very proud and or arrogant, and to suggest otherwise would incite their anger, which is exactly what this trait is about. If a creature tries to place the frightened or charm condition on the dragon, so fear, dominate monster, etc., unless that creature is huge or bigger, the dragon just ignores the effect, and instead is provoked by it, focusing all their attacks on that one creature until they are no longer around or the effect ends. This might be great for characters that are designed to be tanks, but absolutely deadly for squishy spellcasters. A clever wizard trying to command the dragon to grovel, that is just a full round of attacks heading their way. The final trait added is the Draconic Blessing trait. Once the dragon is sufficiently wounded, it simply adds extra damage, in this case fire, to all attacks, and a type of fire aura which ignores standard resistances, so even tieflings need to be very wary. If an ancient dragon can't power up halfway through a fight, it would be disappointing. But that is all the traits, which already are quite powerful. Extra actions, damage and condition immunities are a very strong start for this. But wait, there's more, because now we're onto the actions. We're not hitting the brakes here. The dragon's multi-attack is being upgraded to being able to make 4 attacks per turn. Bite, claw, tail. Though now with the option to replace one of them with a new ranged attack that isn't fire breath. Instead we have the Ember Spit. More on that in a moment. Every attack has been upgraded to make them more dangerous and the battle more tactical. The bite now has a 5-foot radius as well as a 20-foot reach, as let's face it, a dragon's head are big and their necks are long. One person might be lucky enough to take the attack on their armour, Another in the area is getting chomped. Claw attacks now change from a 10-foot reach to a 10-foot cone, as really, what kind of ferocious dragon is going to scratch at its prey with a single talon instead of taking a big swipe, catching as many as possible? That long as heck tail now has a reach befitting a dragon at 35 foot, and it can either swing it in a cone or make a single targeted slam, each dealing different damage amounts, the single slam possibly knocking the target away. The Ember Spit is probably the simplest addition, with a 120-foot range attack and a pretty low damage or chance to hit comparatively, though it is enough to get those fighting at a distance sweating. Fire Breath has also had an upgrade. Though the main damage and save hasn't changed, now wherever the breath is used, the floor starts to burn until the dragon's next turn. Plus anyone who fails the save now starts burning too, unless they put themselves out. And lastly, for the actions, is a new one for dragons. A once per day ability called Draconic Surge. This one is for the DMs that get their dragons cornered or pinned by a wall of force, or stuck on the other side of a short tunnel. It lets the dragon convert into their elemental energy as they cover the area between 2 points with damage reappearing at the other end. In essence, it is a teleport ability. The range depends on the dragon's breath range, and all the extra environmental and character damage from the breath weapon apply to it too. This is one of the points where it's good to check which damage you want to adapt this to. A red dragon has a 90-foot cone breath weapon, whereas a blue dragon has a 120-foot line. The width doesn't change though, and the effect on the floor and to the characters can be easily flavoured depending on the elemental type. All that is left are the legendary actions. Don't worry, there is very little to add here. There is still the standard detect action, Ember Spit is added in as another action replacing the tail attack, and finally the wing attack has received its due upgrade. The wing attack has an appropriate 45-foot radius area of effect, and those too close make the save at disadvantage. However, fail by too much and the character can be knocked back quite a bit before the dragon takes flight. A deadly combination for picking off characters. Besides letting you know the whole stat block is in the link below, that is everything for the Deadly Dragons homebrew. Or is it? I feel like it is a bit mean to leave you with a whole new dragon to fight, suggesting the dragon scale should be different but not helping out a little with how to run a fight. So let's create a quick combat example together. For this I'm taking inspiration from the YouTuber JoeCat, who did a really cool D&D campaign that ended with a dragon fight, though the dragon was made up of different parts. First off, since this dragon isn't a 20-foot cube, we're going to break it down into 3 parts, the front, middle and back. Essentially, head, body and tail. This is so that if used on a map or VTT, the dragon can be split into multiple parts, allowing it to bend and curve around the map more, hopefully making for a more exciting and dynamic battle. It is also so we can give the players different ways to approach the dragon. Movement is attached to the middle section, so walking, climbing or flying is based on the position of the middle section. This does mean that the front and back section can end up further or behind where the middle is, which might be fun for poking the head through a doorway. So how would this work with moving the dragon around the map? Think of it as the middle being the actual location of the dragon, and the front and back being where the head and tail return to between actions. They still have their full range of movement, but just like how a boxer returns to a ready stance after an attack, so do dragons. It is in these positions that the dragon can be attacked, meaning a party is going to have to move around a lot more to keep the dragon in range, or keep themselves out of range of different parts. On that note, all the parts share one pool of hit points, and act as a single entity when resisting spells and making saves. However, each part has a different AC, as a large torso is going to be easier to hit than a head or tail flailing around the place. We can put the front AC at 26, middle at 22 and back at 24. And if anyone complains about getting clawed when they stand at the rear of the dragon, remind them that a dragon has 4 legs, and there is nothing stopping it horse-kicking a rogue trying to sneak up near its flank. And with that, those are the bare bones of how I would run a combat encounter with this dragon using different scaling. This is a concept that could be applied to other titanic creatures that clearly exceed the confines of the gargantuan 20-foot cube. Is this very mean towards players? Oh, most definitely. But will they celebrate even more when overcoming it? I really hope so. The purpose of this, like many of my homebrews, is to provide games with more challenges and opportunities to get creative. As stated before, this stat block is meant to be a template for different dragons. So if you like the direction this went, feel free to swap out the ability scores, health, attack bonuses and DCs with those other dragons. Those are parts I didn't want to touch, as the chance for a dragon to miss most attacks is very, very low, unless it is going up against an extremely prepared and min-max party. But hey, this was fun. Do you think your party would survive this encounter? Or would the dragon still need a few elementals or adult dragons to back it up? Have fun and fly high.